Yellowstone National Park supervolcano could blow and end all life on Earth. Okay, maybe that's a bit dramatic, but it's also kind of true. And Yellowstone isn't even the only one. There are at least 12 more out there that could do the same. So let's find out what these world-ending supervolcanoes are, why they pose such a massive threat, and whether we could ever stop one from erupting if we needed to. Volcanoes are rated based on how dangerous they are, and while most volcanoes are pretty chill, some can be extremely dangerous. You may have heard of Mount Vesuvius, which destroyed the Roman city of Pompeii back in 79 AD. Or maybe you know about Krakatoa, which caused a tsunami that killed more than 36,000 people when it blew up in 1883. But these guys are small potatoes compared to the biggest, baddest volcanoes on the planet, the supervolcanoes. A supervolcano is defined as a volcano that has had an eruption magnitude of 8 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI. To put that in perspective, the largest eruption in recorded history was a 7 on the VEI. It was Mount Tambora in Indonesia back in 1815. The eruption was so big that it led to an 1816 eruption winter. The following year saw widespread crop failures, famine, and disease outbreaks across the northern hemisphere. So moving up to an 8 on the VEI, we get an eruption that's 10 times more powerful than anything recorded in human history. This would be a truly apocalyptic event, and we have the Yellowstone Supervolcano to thank for our worst-case scenario, outlining just how bad things could get. Yellowstone is located in the northwest corner of the U.S. in the eponymous Yellowstone National Park. But this park is famous for much more than just its supervolcano. It's home to bison, black bears, wolves, geysers, and hot springs. In fact, the world's first national park established back in 1872. All of this makes it seem like a great place for a picnic lunch. But buried beneath the beautiful scenery is a magma chamber roughly 4 times larger than Manhattan, and containing enough magma to fill up 2 of the United States. This underground chamber is what fuels the Yellowstone supervolcano, and over the past 2 million years it has blown up 3 times, creating the Yellowstone caldera. This is a massive crater-like structure whose diameter is about 43 by 28 miles. In comparison, the largest known impact crater on Earth, the Redefort crater in South Africa, measures around 140 miles across. So you can see that the Yellowstone caldera is really something else. And the next time it blows its stack, it'll probably be one of the worst events in human history. Thankfully, we don't expect it to happen anytime soon. Researchers monitoring the volcano haven't noticed anything too alarming. Even though it rumbled a bit in 1859, 1985, and 2018, it's been pretty quiet since then. Still, no one knows exactly how to predict when a supervolcano will erupt. So scientists keep a close eye on the telltale signs just in case. And fortunately for us, we have a few ways of detecting an impending disaster. If Yellowstone were to blow tomorrow, we'd likely notice a few things before the main event. First, there would be swarms of small earthquakes. Volcanoes are never very far from being active, so their rumblings often register as earthquakes. These aren't usually strong enough to cause serious damage, but they might be more intense than usual before a major eruption. Next, the ground would start bulging. A buildup of pressure below the surface would cause parts of the land around the volcano to slowly rise. Then, gas emissions would increase. As the magma rose, dissolved gases within it would also rise. If these gases reached the surface, they could form gas clouds that blotted out the sun. Finally, before the main event, the temperature of the area would increase as heat from the magma made its way to the surface. So if we saw these signs, we'd likely be able to escape Yellowstone before the worst happened. But that's only if it happened in Yellowstone. This brings us to the other supervolcanoes we need to worry about. There are 8 other confirmed supervolcanoes on Earth, and we have reason to believe there could be many more. Some of them, like Toba in Indonesia, have already caused global disasters in the past. Others, like Cerro Galán in Chile, could prove equally disastrous if they were to blow today. While none of them are expected to erupt anytime soon, we don't know exactly when they'll blow. So here are a few of the world-ending scenarios that could kick off at any moment. If the magma chamber suddenly emptied, it would cause the entire roof of the caldera to collapse in on itself. If the magma managed to reach the surface, however, this wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. The magma would likely come out in pulses, and each pulse would look like a normal volcanic eruption. These eruptions would be large, but confined to the caldera itself. The danger lies in the ash cloud. Particles released into the atmosphere would block sunlight and send temperatures plummeting. Plants would die and food shortages would quickly follow. Worse yet, the ash and gas clouds would spread around the world, leading to global crop failure. People would starve unless they had food stored away. Now let's say that a mega earthquake struck near the magma chamber. This would destabilize the ground above it and cause the caldera to collapse. Again, this wouldn't be too dangerous for people living nearby, since the earthquake would strike first and cause most of the damage. However, the resulting caldera collapse would release tons of ash and poisonous gases into the atmosphere. Ash would block sunlight and disrupt farming. Poisonous gases would lead to breathing difficulties, and acid rain would pollute water sources. It would be hard for anyone to survive. But what if a big earthquake hit somewhere else? We've already discussed that Yellowstone is closely monitored for seismic activity. But it's not the only volcano getting the star treatment. Experts also monitor Mount Vesuvius, Mount St. Helens and Mount Rainier, all in the US, but many more are monitored around the world. For example, Mount Ibu in Indonesia has been closely monitored for decades. Since 1994, locals have felt earthquakes every day. Scientists have been expecting an eruption for a long time now, but in 2021, an eruption was imminent, so they evacuated the surrounding areas. If something similar happened near Yellowstone, it could cause the magma chamber to destabilize. Even if the actual volcano didn't erupt, the shockwaves would be enough to trigger a massive chain reaction. Magma would spill out of the chamber, collapse the caldera, and unleash a wave of destruction. So while it might be unlikely that a faraway earthquake could cause Yellowstone to blow, it's not impossible. And unfortunately, there's nothing we could do to stop it. There's no way to de-escalate a situation with a supervolcano. Even if we did notice signs of an impending eruption, there's nothing we could do to stop it. Sure, we could evacuate the surrounding areas, but there's nowhere to go. The disaster would affect the entire world. Some people might think that nuking a volcano would work, but it won't. During the Cold War, scientists considered this as a way of controlling volcanic activity. They thought that nuclear bombs could either halt an eruption or even stop a volcano that had already blown. But this plan was eventually scrapped, because scientists realized that detonating bombs inside a volcano wouldn't reach the magma chamber. The bombs would either go off harmlessly or cause even more damage. So we'd have to sit back and watch as the apocalypse unfolded before our eyes. And we might not even get that chance. An eruption would happen so fast that evacuations would be impossible. People would have mere minutes to take cover, assuming they knew what was happening in the first place. In the blink of an eye, the world would change forever. So what happens now? Well, the aftermath of a Yellowstone eruption would depend on several factors. How much magma was released, how high the ash cloud went, and how quickly the disaster unfolded would all play a role. But it's safe to say that global crop failure and mass starvation would be on the menu. Ash clouds would drift around the world, killing birds and blocking sunlight. Radiation from the ash would render most food sources stuck at the bottom of the ocean. Any fish that did survive would be radioactive and unsafe to eat, so unless you had food stored away, you wouldn't last long after the eruption. There would also be health issues. The air quality would be terrible, so breathing would be difficult. Eventually, enough ash would fall to blanket entire countries. Survivors who hadn't suffocated would be buried under feet of ash. To make matters worse, the collapse of the caldera would displace millions of people. All those living in the surrounding areas would have nowhere to go. Their homes would either be destroyed or buried under ash. So if we somehow survived the initial blast, we'd likely die from starvation, suffocation, or exposure shortly thereafter. So yeah, it would definitely suck if Yellowstone were to blow, but thankfully, it doesn't look like it will anytime soon. It's currently dormant, and there are no signs of unrest. Plus, experts are constantly monitoring the volcano, so we'd likely have a lot of warning if things started to go south. Still, it's best to be prepared for the worst, just in case. After all, it is a supervolcano we're talking